Madam Secretary, thanks so much for doing this, and congratulations on Tuesday night.
Thanks a lot, Jake. It was terrific. We really
4 for 5.
Yeah, we had a great campaign in all the states. It felt good.
That night, Donald Trump said that he considers himself the presumptive nominee of his party. Do you consider yourself the presumptive nominee?
No, I consider myself as someone who's on the path, and obviously I'm very far ahead in both the popular vote and the delegate count. So I think the path leads to the nomination, but I'm going to keep competing in the elections that are up ahead of us.
Senator Sanders issued a statement that night that suggested he's not necessarily running to win anymore. He's running to advance progressive causes on the Democratic platform. Specifically, he named $15 minimum wage at the national level, Medicare for all, breaking up the banks, changing our trade policy, and passing a tax on carbon. Are these issues where you think you could make a deal with Senator Sanders, find some common ground and get those issues on the platform, should you be the nominee?
Well, I certainly look forward to working with Senator Sanders in the lead up to the convention, in the lead up to the platform that will represent the Democratic Party. It will be a progressive platform. I've run on a progressive agenda. I really welcome his ideas and his supporters' passion and commitment, because the most important thing for us is to win in November. There is no more important goal, and I was pleased when Senator Sanders said the other day he's going to work tirelessly 7 days a week to make sure that Donald Trump is not president, and I really welcome that, because that has to be our primary objective.
It's interesting because of all the people in the world, there is probably no one who knows what Bernie Sanders is feeling more than you.
Right.
Take us back to 2008, what you think Senator Sanders is going through, because it's like, oh, I came so close, but.
It's hard, Jake. I mean, you throw yourself into these campaigns, body and soul. You work 24/7. Your family, your supporters, everybody is so invested in trying to win. And I'm very proud of my campaign, grateful that I have such strong support, but I absolutely understand that Senator Sanders has been a passionate advocate for positions that he cares deeply about. I think that's been helpful to the Democratic primary process. He's brought millions of people into the process, which I think is also very good for the Democratic Party. But there comes a time when you have to look at the reality. In fact, in 2008, I was much closer in both popular vote and pledged delegates to Senator Obama than is the case right now. But eventually, I just decided that I had to withdraw and support Senator Obama, because the goal was to make sure we had a Democrat in the White House. I'm going to be very aggressive in reaching out to Senator Sanders supporters, but we have so much more in common, and we have far more in common than they do with Donald Trump or any Republican.
You talked about Donald Trump's foreign policy. He gave a foreign policy address recently. I'm wondering if you had a chance to see it or think or read about it, and what you thought.
Well, I've certainly read about it, and I think it's quite concerning. His talk about pulling out of NATO, his talk about letting other countries have nuclear weapons, which runs counter to 70 years of bipartisan national security policy. His idea that he, quote, has a secret plan to get rid of ISIS that he's not going to tell anybody. I found it disturbing, because as a senator from New York for 8 years, as Secretary of State for 4 years, I know that the stakes are high, that we face some real challenges and dangers in the world. And I don't think loose talks about loose nukes, I don't think turning our back on our strongest allies, I don't think pretending you have some sort of secret plan is a very smart way to go forward in leading the world, which is what we must do.
On some issues, it seems like he's going to run to your left, on a populist left, and one of them might be the use of force and military intervention. And whether it's Libya or Iraq, what will your response be when he says Hillary Clinton is part of the group that gets us into these wars?
Well, look, I think that I'm always someone who uses military force as a last resort. It's not a first choice. As Secretary of State, I talked a lot about smart power, about diplomacy and development. So when you have somebody who says he's going to be tough and he's going to get results, but he doesn't tell you how he's going to do it, I think we'll have a lot to contrast with.
He also said that if you were a man, you would be at 5% in the polls. What did you think when you heard that?
I don't respond to his attacks on me. I think it's kind of silly. I was elected to the Senate twice from New York. I was someone who got more than 18 million votes the first time I ran. I now have 2 million more votes than Donald Trump has, more than 12 million votes to his 10. So it doesn't really square with reality.
He has taken politics to a new place with his negative branding of people, whether it's saying Jeb Bush is low energy or talking about Lion Ted Cruz. And for his supporters, it's really worked. He has lately taken to calling you, I believe, corrupt Hillary, and he's had some rather personal and pointed tweets. Have you learned anything from watching the way that Republicans dealt with him in the primaries that will inform how you will deal with such an unconventional candidate?
Well, remember, I have a lot of experience dealing with men who sometimes get off the reservation in the way they behave and how they speak. I'm not going to deal with their temper tantrums or their bullying or their efforts to try to provoke me. He can say whatever he wants to say about me. I could really care less. I'm going to stand up for what I think the American people need and want in the next president. That's why I've laid out very specific plans. There's nothing secret about what I want to do with the economy, with education, with healthcare, with foreign policy. I've laid it all out there. And he can't, or he won't. I can't tell which. So we're going to talk about what we want to do for the country, and he can continue on his insult fest, but that's the choice he's making.
He will also try to attack you for the trade deals that he's attacked so many of his Republican rivals for. And he says he's going to try to redraw the map and compete in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan, appealing to white working class voters who feel like most favored nation status for China or NAFTA hurt them. What argument will you make to those white working class voters?
Well, look, I won Ohio, more votes than he got in Ohio. I won Pennsylvania, more votes than he got in Pennsylvania. I feel very good about where we are because I have a positive agenda to create jobs. And I've said very clearly, I will not support any trade agreement that I don't think creates more good jobs with rising incomes. That's why I'm against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's why I voted against the only multilateral trade agreement that came before me when I was in the Senate. I think that he can say whatever he wants to say, and he will, of course, but I have a track record of really helping people and standing up against China.
Do you think that the trade deals pushed forward in the 80s and 90s, ultimately some of them hurt working class voters in this country?
There's no doubt about that. And they were mixed. They helped a lot of people and they hurt people. And one of our problems in our country is that we don't do enough for people who are hurt by trade deals. But just picture this. I was at an auto plant, a unionized auto plant, a UAW local, oldest local in the country, outside of South Bend the other day. They are making Mercedes-Benz cars to export to China. They are making the only mobile vehicle for people with disabilities to export around the world. They make Humvees. They have a broad array of products they produce. There are about 1,400 people with 3,000 more in the supply chain. So they are in the global market, but they're in it in a way that advantages America. That's what I'm looking for. We're only 5% of the population. We've got to trade with the other 95%. We just have to be smart and tough in the way we do it.
Do you think Donald Trump is qualified to be president?
Well, the voters will have to determine that. I'm going to lay out my qualifications.
11 years ago, when you were at the wedding of Donald and Melania Trump, did you ever picture that you would be in this situation with him as the presumptive Republican nominee, you as likely the Democratic nominee, running against each other in what is likely going to be a very brutal and tough campaign?
Well, look, back then I didn't think I would run for president, so I can't speak to whatever was in his mind, but that's a good question.
But it's safe to say that sitting there watching the two get married, it never crossed your mind, someday he and I are going to face each other?
Never crossed my mind. No, not at all. Never crossed my mind.
Madam Secretary, thank you, and congratulations again.
Thanks a lot, Jake.